Hello everyone, my name is Zhao Wang from Northwestern University. Today I'm going to talk about our paper on efficient and secure multi-party computation from fixed key block ciphers. This paper is joined with Chun Guo from Shandong University, Jonathan Katz from George Mason University, and Yu Yu from Shanghai Jiao Tong University. So this paper is about secure multi-party computation. So secure multi-party computation is a protocol that can be executed among a set of parties to jointly compute one function over all their input. The security definition of multi-party computation ensures that by running this protocol, it is as secure as everybody sending their own input to a trusted party who will not reveal their input to other parties. Although we usually call secure multi-party computation by MPC, actually secure is the most important word over here. In order to obtain provable security, the MPC community has developed a set of rigorous and principled ways to design MPC. And we can categorize all these techniques and tools into four layers of stack over here. The top layer contains all the applications like privacy-preserving machine learning, anonymous communication, auctions, and many other examples. So all these applications are built upon protocols. These protocols can be, for example, Garbage Circuit, oblivious transfer, and many other tools like triples, or OLE and VOLE. These protocols are in turn built on different kind of assumptions and trusted setups. These assumptions can be algebraic assumptions like DDH, LWE, or it can also be some kind of trusted setups like random oracle, and also some symmetric primitives like PRF or one-way function. However, in practice, we need to instantiate them in some way that we can program on hardware. And this comes to the implementation instantiation. For example, for DDH, we may need to choose the group that we want to use. For random oracle, we might want to instantiate that using, for example, SHA-3. And for PRF, we can, for example, instantiate it using AES. So in most of the work that has been done in MPC, we are mostly concerned about the proofs for the top three layers. Indeed, most proofs actually only covers the top three layers. When it comes down to the implementation instantiation, it is actually a danger zone. Why it is a danger zone? Because there are so many undocumented optimizations and also details that are often just treated as folklore without really careful consideration. And this can really be very problematic. So the focus of this paper is essentially the bottom layer of the whole MPC stack, that is the implementation. We would like to understand the security that can be provided by the MPC implementations instead of the MPC protocols. So in particular, in this paper, we are going to first focus on all the hash functions that has been used in Goblin, as well as hash functions that has been used in OT extension. Before we go into details, one may ask why we want to focus on hash functions. Well, this is because different kind of hash functions has been commonly used in many different kind of MPC protocols. And in particular, in many of them, we often model these hash functions as a random oracle. And also another feature is that they often be used to hash very short strings like a 128-bit string or something like this. However, why not just use a SHA-3 and model it as a random oracle for all cases? Well, the issue is performance. To understand the performance gap of hashing short strings using different schemes, let's take a look at our benchmark first. So here we present the speed of hashing short strings using different kind of batch sizes. We can see that when the batch size increases, the number of cycles that is needed for different schemes decreases. This is because we can take advantage of CPU pipelining. For fixed key AES, ultimately we only need 10 cycles per AES call. This is because AES only has 10 rounds, and the AES-NI allows us to perform one round of encryption in one cycle. So XRP is something that is indifferentiable from a random oracle. It requires 2 calls to fix key AES and can hash 128-bit to a random 128-bit string. AES plus key scheduling is something even slower. Even after the optimization that has been proposed before, to accelerate it using AES-NI, it still requires 4 times the cost of fixed key AES. Once we go to the land of SHA, it becomes even much worse. For example, for SHA-256, the speed is about 60 times slower than fixed KAES. And even after AES-NI, it's still going to be 20 times slower than fixed KAES. And the software implementation of SHA-3 is even slower. Due to the huge performance gain that we can get from fixed key AES, we are going to focus on instantiating securely existing hash functions using fixed key AES. As a summary of our result, in this paper, we essentially give end-to-end security proofs for protocols based on fixed key block ciphers. We first analyzed existing protocols and implementations and found that many of them are problematic in different kind of aspects. And then we consider several notions of pseudo-randomness for the hash function and show and explore how these different kind of abstractions are suitable for different protocols with different security requirements. And finally, we show how to construct the pseudo-randomness for these functions using fixed key block ciphers in a probable way by modeling fixed key AES as a random permutation. Now let's first take a look at the current state of affairs. And here we will focus on 3 layers of the picture on protocols, assumption and trusted setup, and implementation instantiation. So we will mostly focus on passive OT extension, active OT extension, and different kind of garbling schemes. In existing work, passive and active OT extension are all constructed based on some kind of correlation robustness. Due to the reasons that I won't be able to cover in the video, the existing proofs on active OT extension from correlation robustness actually suffers from some problems. And for this kind of correlation robustness, the only known way to instantiate them securely is actually to use a random oracle. On the other hand, on the garbling scheme, in a just garble paper, they proved the security of the garbling scheme assuming a random permutation. The half-gate scheme proposed an intermediate correlation robustness that is somewhat that can be treated as a relaxed circular correlation robustness. However, although their scheme is secure under this kind of abstraction, their abstraction cannot be proven secure in the random permutation model. And in the implementation, we can, for example, instantiate random oracle using different some kind of SHA hash function, and we can, for example, instantiate random permutation using fixed KAES. So up to now, so over here, all the solid lines are secure and provable, and we would expect that all the implementation should follow all the solid line over here. However, in practice, most implementations essentially just instantiate different kind of hash functions and schemes directly using fixed key AES without really considering the proof. And this is mostly based on some kind of folklore that a certain use or certain way of using fixed key AES provides us some way of correlation robustness without any proof. Let's first take a look at the correlation robustness that is used in our paper. With the hash function h, we can always define a keyed function f sub k of x by feeding the key and by XORing key and x and feed that into the hash function. We see that a hash function h is correlation robust if this corresponding key function is a pseudo-random function. Similar definitions has been proposed previously with some weaker security. For example, in the seminal work of IEEE OT extension, they proposed a correlation robustness, but only require the corresponding pseudo-random function to be a weak PRF. Later on, a slightly stronger version was proposed in a follow-up paper where they only require K to contain certain mean entropy instead of being uniform. The tweakable correlation robust hash function is defined in a similar way compared to correlation robustness. So essentially, the hash function now takes an input x and also a I as input. And the corresponding keyed function is also defined in a similar way. Now we are seeing that h is tweakable correlation robust if the corresponding key function is a pseudo-random function with a larger input size. Note that our definitions over here are stronger than previous definitions in the sense that first, there's no restriction on the value of x or I, and that there is no and that we allow adaptive queries to the pseudo-random function. As I mentioned before, in this paper, we model fixed KAS as a random permutation. So now let's take a deeper look at the random permutation model. So essentially, the idea is that we are going to assume that we have a fixed permutation pipe from a 128-bit to another 28-bit to 128-bit string. So with AES, we can imagine that we fix the encryption key of AES. So essentially, the model is that with a fixed key for AES, this kind of mapping is a random permutation. So this kind of random permutation model is similar to the random oracle model, where the adversary is given access to the oracle. Note that in the random permutation model, the adversary has access to the permutation, but also the inverse of the permutation. So it's not a one-way permutation, but really just a public function where everybody has both access to both way of the permutation. In our paper, we only need a non-programmable version of the random permutation, and this turns out to be enough. Note that one can also model AES as an ideal cipher, which essentially means that every key of AES is a random permutation. Note that this is a stronger version than the random permutation model, because we only need to assume a certain fixed key in AES is a random permutation. Now, with all these definitions, we can construct a correlation robust hash function that satisfies our definition. So note, so our construction that we denote as MMO of x is essentially pi of x, x or x. So this construction has been known for a long time before. However, in the previous work, it was only shown that this construction is one way. However, here we show that it is also correlation robust. In fact, our claim is that if pi is a random permutation, then this MMO is correlation robust where the adversary having access to pi and pi inverse has an advantage at most 2pq over 2 to the n plus q squared over 2 to the n, 2 to the n plus 1. So essentially, it's a birthday-like bond. So our proof uses techniques called the edge coefficient method, which is a well-established method in the symmetric key literatures. We also found an attack that match this upper bound, meaning that our proof is essentially tight in terms of the advantage. So similarly, we can also construct a tweakable correlation robust hash function in a similar way. However, instead of using one permutation call, now we need two permutation call. Although it looks like there are 3 pi's, we actually only need 2 pi's because pi of x just need to be computed once. And similarly, our claim is that if pi is a random permutation, then this TMMO construction is a tweakable correlation robust. In fact, it is also tweakable circular correlation robust, so something even stronger. So now let's look at the efficiency. With all our constructions, MMO prime, and the tweakable correlation robust, they can be used securely and efficiently for different purposes. For example, for actively secure OT extension, it can use tweakable correlation robust hash function that only requires roughly 20 cycles per hash. For gobbling, that is used for example for the half gate gobbling scheme, it just needed the circular correlation robust version, which is roughly about 13 CPU cycles per hash call. And for passive OT extension, a regular correlation robust hash function is needed, which takes about 12 CPU cycles. In our paper, we also reported the overall efficiency of protocols where these new hash functions are used. Please refer to our paper for more details. So after this work, where we formalize all the abstractions of correlation robustness, we later have a follow-up work to further improve the security of these hash functions. So recall that from this paper, we claim that our MMO construction is secure, assuming that pi is a random permutation. However, the advantage suffers from a birthday bound. So this birthday bound essentially means that given an n-bit random permutation, then essentially we can only obtain n minus log of q bits of computational security, where q is the total number of hash function calls. In practice, q can be very large if the circuit size is very large. For example, if we have a billion circuit, then log q is about 30. So that's not optimal. And in the follow-up work, we actually find a way to improve the computational security and to be optimal. However, to obtain this kind of optimal security, we would need the ideal cipher model instead of the random permutation model. That's kind of the trade-off that we need to make. So our paper is available on ePrint, and the implementation of various schemes can already be found in different repos, including the repo EM bound attack, OT protocol construction by Gawa, and also the EMP toolkit.